Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you are watching on our rapidly growing YouTube channel, even growing during the off season, which is awesome to see. That is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ here for another episode of our off-season UNC football ISO series. Going to be focusing on Des Evans in this one. We're really looking forward to talking about the junior and his junior season that's coming up here shortly. But before we dive into that, AJ, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor on this podcast, openingdaygame.com. So guys, for those who don't know, this is what openingdaygame.com does. It lists the number one sports bar in over 1,200 U.S. cities. And you can find that on their website at openingdaygame.com. Just go to that that bar feature. I'll throw a graphic in here as well and a link to their website in the description. They also have a really awesome app that allows you to do that as well. It's got a really awesome feature. So essentially what it does is it allows you in over 1,200 U.S. cities to find some of the top sports bars in that area. To me, that's extremely useful. This guy's, traveling a lot for some journalism, not nearly as much as AJ does, but I know he can relate to this as well. You go to a new city, want to maybe grab a quick little bite to eat and a couple beers, watch some games. Use openingdaygame.com, find the best sports bar in that area, go check them out. It does it in less than 60 seconds. It's just incredibly easy to use and a really, really cool tool.
What's interesting about it is that I don't do that often, but sometimes I go somewhere and want to get a feel, like a football season, I want to get a feel the night before a game if I'm there early enough. You Google stuff, you can't really trust it, in my opinion, just because it depends on SEO stuff, what pops up first, and people can manipulate that. Sometimes I'll ask someone at the front desk, but there are often times they look at me like I have horns growing out of my head. And I say, somewhere I can just watch some sports, grab a little bite to eat, have a beer. Either they send me to the wrong place and I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? Or they look like me like I don't have any idea what I'm talking about. This app is fantastic. And it's not just a sports bar thing. You go in there, mess around with it. There's a lot of stuff you can get out of it. I like the tailgate features in there too. Cool. Those are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different features in the app. Go check them out. Again, you can download that app really easily just by going to openingdaygame.com. I believe there's a couple links for Android and Apple that'll take you right to the App Store where you can download. Really, really awesome app. It just makes looking for sports bars if you're in some random place you've never been to so much easier. And who doesn't love a sports bar? I mean, if you're watching this podcast, you're a sports guy, so I'm assuming you like a sports bar too. Again, check them out, openingdaygame.com. All right, AJ, let's dive into Des Evans on this one. A guy in a position group I'm really excited about seeing under the new defensive regime and Gene Chizik and Charlton Warren and all that jazz. Really looking forward to seeing how this changes a little bit. But AJ, what are your kind of initial thoughts on Des Evans, looking at his career at Carolina so far, but also, looking a little bit ahead to what his role can be and probably will be on next year's team?
That the thing I enjoy most about doing what I do is watching players, coaches, players, and teams and programs grow. Mm-hmm. I like to watch them come in as one thing about the time they leave with being the players. They leave as something else. I watched, especially in basketball, because you can start slow and end up strong, like the basketball team at UNC showed this past year. Yep. I'm a big fan of the process. Des Evans's process kind of went in a direction the first 2 years. Maybe it shouldn't have. Maybe he would be further ahead going into his junior year had he been playing straight up defensive end, rush end all along. But the hybrid thing, I think, slowed some of his development. But I also think it's going to help him, because anytime you're forced to play out of your comfort zone as much as he was, it's only going to make you better, I think, when you get back in your comfort zone. And so I think he's actually going to be a better player by the time he comes, all his time at defensive end comes to fruition to be whatever the player he's going to show the NFL he is when it's time for him to try to move on to the next level. He will have benefited from those first 2 years in some ways. The thing about it is, though, he's entering his third year, Jacob, and he's now going to be a regular with a hand on the ground. He's now going to be a regular on the rush end. Every snap, there's physicality at the point of at the snap, the point of attack. There's going to be a lot more engagement. He's going to have to learn a lot of that stuff that maybe he didn't have to do as much of the first 2 years. To paraphrase what Cedric Gray said, after the spring game, there's no way I would ever put a 6'6" guy in pass coverage, covering short receivers, quick receivers, and running backs. But that's what Dez was doing a lot the first 2 years. It'll help him. It broadened his game. It forced him out of a comfort zone. But ultimately, he needs to be where he's going to be now. He said, and I quote, "I'm home. I'm back home at defensive end." This is where his strengths are. He's a rush end guy. He's a chase the quarterback down. He's a difficult guy to block. He ought to be able to help them in some run situations as well. If he wants to be an NFL player, he's got to be able to play all snap situations in college. We'll find out if he can. Mm-hmm. We certainly have every reason to believe he can be a really good pass rusher. The consistency factor of not taking himself out of plays and allowing escape lanes for quarterbacks and stuff to open up, all those kind of things he's going to have to learn over the course of the season. But the talent level is there. And now the fact he's just going to be playing what he should have been playing all along, that's a part of the equation as well. So we should see pretty quick growth with him as a straight up defensive end pass rusher this year. And I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I think the defensive end position is one I'm really looking forward to seeing. I know the whole defense, I've said it on a few different podcasts, the whole defense as a whole, I'm really looking forward to seeing how it transforms under Gene Chizik because of how different it's just naturally going to be in terms of in comparison to what Jay Bateman used to do. And I do agree. I think we all, in some ways over the last couple of years in terms of covering the team, always thought it was just incredibly different that you had, outside linebackers, as they called them, that were, essentially DNs in high school. I mean, that's what most, schematically, most you're going to see the most, kind of having to cover guys, out of the backfield and whatnot, having to cover receivers and stuff like that. It's so much different. I think when you get a guy like Des Evans, as talented as he was in high school, as good of an athlete as he is, and you put a hand on the ground, you put him on that edge and you let him go get the quarterback, I think you're going to see a better version, not only from Des Evans, but from the other defensive ends in that room now. I just think it makes a lot more sense because Des Evans is also a guy that's played a lot of football, played 10 games, appeared in 10 games his freshman year, 3 starts last year, played in 12 games, started the opening game at Virginia Tech as well. So he's a guy that's played a lot of football at North Carolina, maybe so far hasn't hit the heights that some Carolina fans expected, but even under a completely different scheme and a role he did not play in high school, having to learn that, he still was effective, really effective at times. And I think he can continue to be even more effective under Gene Chizik and when he's just a straight up defensive end, go and get the quarterback, contain all that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that position group transforms. But to narrow down on Des Evans, I'm really looking forward to seeing how his role in his game transforms because I think the comfortability there is just going to be so much higher compared to what he was being asked to do over the last couple of seasons.
Well, it's not criticism to say that he appeared out of place as a true freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And last year at times, I think he did as well. I credit to him for elevating his game. Mm-hmm. And the week that they played Wake at home. They beat Wake when they were number 10 in the country. And then 5 days later, they're at Pittsburgh. Well, he played 44 snaps against Wake and 42 at Pitt. So he played 86 snaps in a 5.5-day period. And I think that to me, and he did it in a position that stressed him because it wasn't suited to his greatest strengths on the field. I think that's a 5.5, 6 day period out of the pre-Gene Chizik era that you can look at and say, Des has made a lot of progress. He's trusted in those situations. They were close games. They were must-win type games. They were in that position where they needed to get some wins. And he was trusted and there was a lot of physicality and he made it through and he did that. I think that was a step forward week for him. And I think that helped him when Chizik came along once things were simplified. Gene told us, we talked to him about 10 days or so after the spring game. And I'm going to paraphrase here, just tell Des, here's 3 or 4 things we need you to do. Go be great at these 3 or 4, or go be damn good at these 3 or 4 things. And don't worry about a bunch of other stuff. And in the previous role, he was worrying about the other stuff. And there was way too much there. And it's too much for a lot of guys at that level, unless they're elite. And he's not elite yet. But now that he gets to focus on 3 or 4 things and just 3 or 4 things, and he said, go be the best you could be at those 3 or 4 things. There are people that believe he has an opportunity to be elite. Mm. We'll see. I think that elite can be in the framework, but there's a lot that goes on in order to fill that frame. I think the potential is there that he could be very, very good. Elite maybe in the following year, in the 2023 year, but the goods are there. There's a lot of stuff there. We'll see how it comes out. If he's physical enough, if he can handle the physicality, I think he's going to be in good shape, and therefore Carolina will be in better shape, having traditional pass rusher who puts his hand on the ground and can get past, around, and through an offensive tackle and deal with occasional double teams.
Yeah, agreed. I think the potential to be the high end with him is very high, and I think a more simplified role, for lack of a better word, for a guy like Des Evans is going to allow him to get up to that level a lot easier than it would have been under, no disrespect to, Jay Bateman or anything like that, than under that scheme and what he was asked to do.
It was the wrong scheme.
Agreed.
And I think that the program has been pretty clear about that. I mean, Cedric Gray said it himself, and nobody walked it back. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. In sports, there's a winner and there's a loser every time teams play. So people in athletics know how to deal with being wrong. They know how to deal with losing. They know how to deal with being beaten. And the reality is, I think it was a great move on Mack Brown's part to try it. When Mack came back, I thought it was such a positive sign, and it's an example of how he's always been so progressive and forward in the sport. He went and embraced a defensive scheme and an offensive scheme he didn't run previously. Mm-hmm. So in the 5 years he was out, he adapted because he got to see all kinds of stuff. It was not uncomfortable for him. There's some of those coaches really, hey, coach, why don't you throw the ball every once in a while? And they're in a deep sweat when the quarterback drops back. I'm being facetious, but I'm also making a point. Mack's never been like that. He tried it, and we talked about it last season how many times, Jacob, when we said during podcast, Mack is learning an awful lot about what he doesn't want this year. Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of that learning process was, and he gave the bowl game one last opportunity, and this stuff doesn't work. They made some progress defensively late last year, but in the end, and I think part of it's because guys like Evans got better at what they were being asked to do. But in the end, it wasn't the right scheme, because if you're going to have guys like Des Evans on the field, you're not going to put him at nose tackle. You're not going to put him at traditional defensive tackle, and there's nowhere else for him to play. When he was born, God said, defensive end, go get the quarterback.
Yep.
The mom and dad put the name on the birth certificate, and it should have said pass rusher in parentheses. That's what he is. That's what he should have been the last 2 years. That's what he will be this year.
Yeah, I really think, a lot of players on Carolina's defense are going to benefit from a new scheme. And I really think that defensive line, that defensive end position in particular, is going to be one that benefits a whole lot as well. I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, AJ, the Des Evans edition of our UNC football offseason ISO series. Again, guys, if you haven't seen the ones we've done already, all you got to do is click on our YouTube channel, go to the playlist tab, and you'll see it. I believe the place is called ISO series. Click on that, and you can just watch all the videos. We did a bunch last summer as well, so it'll take you back really far in those. There's some basketball ones as well, so there's a ton of different ones in there. Go check them out. The new updated one should be more towards the top of that one as well. Quick shout out again to our podcast sponsor, openingdaygame.com. Again, check them out, openingdaygame.com. Download the app in the App Store as well, whatever, Android, Apple, whatever you use, you can go download that. Really awesome app. Really, really excited to be partnered with them, and I think it's a really cool thing that a lot of people can get a lot of benefit out of. So check them out at openingdaygame.com. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, so you know every single time we upload. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.